Is that your video? So that was the sacrifice we had to make to get clear skies tonight. So appreciate everybody's willingness to participate in that. Awesome if you had the throat. I'm sure. Is this what we were just What's that? We're officially underway. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for another great night of the Great Texas Prize Giveaway. My name is Joe Caleb. I'm the president of the Houston Astronomical Society. Thank you. And it's my great pleasure to be your MC for this evening. So we've got a wonderful slate of presenters, prizes, awards, and things like that. But we've got to get through a few of the not so fun things before we start, okay? So first I wanted to just go through some of the rules of the road before we hand it off to our next speaker. First off, normally Saturday nights we'd be ready to pack up, get going, but of course we've got a few more nights of hopefully great weather. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a 9 p.m. dark hour. So going forward, make sure that you're using red lights past 9 p.m. and that we're complying with the light rules. Also, 7 p.m. is our gate closing time. So if you want to go out into town, do what it is that you want to do there, make sure that you get back before 7 p.m. If you do arrive after 7 p.m., you'll be asked to park your car outside the gate and to walk back up to wherever you're at. Also, please keep it down as you're driving through the ranch. We do have a 5-mile-per-hour speed limit. I've seen a few speed devils out there, not calling out any names, but please keep it 5 miles per hour. Also, please refrain from smoking out on the field. We do ask that everybody cooperate with us there and not use cigarettes or any other tobacco products out on the field. Lastly, as we start to wind down the Texas Star Party, Saturday night, Sunday morning, please make sure to remove any foil or paper that you have on the windows. Replace the red light bulbs that you have with the white bulbs, place the receptacles they're into those receptacles, and leave those items on your porch. If not, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I believe you'll get a nasty knock on the door, correct? All right. So now that we've gone through the rules of the road, I'd like to ask Robert Reeves to join us. Yes? Sunday morning. Sunday morning. Yes.
Saturday night before you go to bed, unless you want to wake you up Sunday morning.
That's it. Right. By Sunday morning, before you leave, please make sure that you take care of that. Okay? All right. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Robert Reeves to come to the stage. Robert.
Astronomical awards. There we go off a good start. And TSP relaunch. 40 categories, the white field, the blue sky, solar system, and what we all vote on. And the best of show, and very ready. And the white field went to Calvin Harvey for this real nice Milky Way rising from the California. And we have a significant here for you, and Scott will put some hard cash in your hand. Calvin?
Calvin? Come on up.
Come on up. Try one around. Yes. Okay. And Scott, let's see how in the solar system category, David housekeeping had this real nice shot of moonrise in the cat in the eclipse. There's a red box in my heart because he's got red and white. The exposure on this is exquisite. The nebula is perfect. The horsehead nebula is blown out. The flame nebula is good. This is excellent work. And thank you very much. And the runaway for the People's Choice Award, Steve Grimsley, is my Heritage Champion. Excellent. And a little bit of travel cash from thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Robert. Congratulations to all the winners. Those are absolutely fantastic. Next, I'd like to recognize George Ellis, the chairman of the board of the Texas Star Party. George, are you here? There you are. Does this microphone sound a little better by chance, or not? Okay, perfect.
Thank you, John. I want to take the opportunity to done tonight to talk to you a little bit about something that TSP has started this year. Basically, it's a youth outreach campaign. We have, it occurs to me that this year marks the 40th anniversary of our first TSP on the ranch. 1982. Any question? to be here in 40 more. And for that to happen, I think it's going to involve an entirely new generation of people coming to the TSB, a new generation of volunteers, and a new generation of leaders. And this isn't going to happen unless we make a concerted effort now to bring the new generation into the realm of amateur astronomy, to help them discover the joy of the universe that we have, and that we hopefully will be able to get them to come out to TSB as the opportunity presents itself in various people's lives. So that said, what I want to speak to briefly is what some of our main efforts are in this campaign. Go to the next slide, please. You see the posters around for the John Wagner Memorial Student Astronomer Award. Many of you remember John. He passed away in December last year. He has been the leader and manager of the observing program for much of TSB's history. And, you know, we love John dearly. We miss him very, very much. And one of the things I can tell you about John is that he was very dedicated as a teacher and as a inspiration to young people. And I'll tell you more about him later, but I wanted to say that, you know, his passing is kind of inspiration for us to realize we need to do something to carry on his footsteps in terms of teaching youth about astronomy. And so that's the first of our efforts, is that award, and we're going to be presenting that award this evening. Secondly, the Southwest region has, we have a lot of astronomy clubs. We don't necessarily have a lot of junior astronomy clubs. And we want to help the various clubs in the Southwest region do more to get young people involved. And the way to get young people involved is to get other young people involved. And there's no better way to do that than with a society or an organization that is strictly committed to bringing in young people and letting them share that experience. So that's the second thing we want to do. The third, we want to provide astronomy resources for teachers and for the parents of homeschool students so that they can be teaching their kids more about amateur astronomy and about astronomy in general. And it's through that teaching inspiration that we hope to launch a spark in a number of young people that are interested in astronomy. The last effort here on this list is bringing a TSB Light event to other parts of the state of Texas, closer to the population centers, where young people can get an experience like the TSB without having to take time off of school and come all the way out to 4 days. It's a very hard thing for most of them to do. And so we want to bring the TSB to them, so to speak, in a way that is tailored for young people. And that's one of our efforts. And I have one other, of course, is social media. Young people are probably the biggest users of social media, and TSB needs to leverage that. We are setting up an Instagram page this week, or Instagram account this week, that will allow young people and all of you to be able to share your photos and share your experiences on Instagram. So that's something we plan on doing, and there will be more efforts beyond that, I'm sure. And that, let's move on to the raffle results of the outreach program. Thank you, Matt. We have 2 awards this evening. The first is going to be for the Star Adventure program. And the winner of this is Pembroke Square. Is Pembroke here? Come on up, it's yours. The second award, and I don't know that we have it, it's not, we're not quite back yet. The second award, I don't know that we have anything to hand out, so we have to capture the name of the individual to make sure we get in touch with you. The second award is going to be for free registration and camping at next year's Texas Star Fest. And the recipient of this is Linda Carter. Is Linda here? Gone. Well, this is not a must be present. And now I spoke about the student astronomer award named for John Wagner. Now it's time to present that. And I want to begin here by giving a little bit of background on the winner. This student enjoys observing astrophotography and learning theoretical concepts, pursuing astronomical research, utilizing coding and astrophotography skills, was a founding member of the teen organization within the Texas Astronomical Society, did a science project called Star Color Analysis on Messier star clusters, in which he collected color data from his own images of star clusters and did the image processing through Python. The goal here was to show that brighter clusters have younger bluer stars and different clusters have older redder stars. He wrote the Python code himself to process and analyze star cluster images. He's a 9th grader at Jasper High School in Plano, Texas, and the John Wagner Student Astronomer Award is proudly presented to Andrew Yu. Andrew is not here tonight. Celestron will mail his telescope to him. Along with his love. Now, we have a youth outreach committee that looked at the nominations and decided that there were only 2 winners this year because they couldn't decide. That's a nice problem to have, isn't it? So our second individual, as an elementary school student, he started an astronomy club over the pandemic on Zoom to maintain engagement with his friends who were also interested in amateur astronomy. Over the course of time, he acquired a mentor for his club to conduct classes for the members and to help teach them more and more about the hobby they love. He expanded that student club by leveraging the Texas Astronomical Society in Dallas, and in so doing resurrected a junior task that hadn't existed in many, many years. He helped draft its bylaws and its constitution so they could become an official part of TAS, and he served as the first JTAS president and has led the organization to an expansion into both JTAS and a teen task for older students. His mentor calls him an excellent example of what an amateur astronomer should be, and an inspiration to older amateurs as to what service to the hobby really is. And this young man is a 6th grader. The TSP is very, very proud tonight to present the John Wagner Student Astronomer Award to Hanson Yu. Next year, so clubs, get involved, find young people in your organization that you think are deserving, and let us know about it. Now we get on to the traditional awards that we do every year. First is the Lone Star Gazer Award. The recipient of the Lone Star Gazer Award is somebody who actually won this award very, very early on in the history of TSP. But we decided tonight that he is, without question, the most ideal, obvious candidate to win this award again. He has been instrumental in the Texas Star Party for many, many years. We wouldn't be the premier observing event that we are without his effort. And we remember him for his wit, for his laugh, for his humor, and for his dedication to the hobby. The Lone Star Gazer Award this year is being presented posthumously to John Wagner. And finally, the Omega Centauri Award for dedication to the hobby, dedication to popularization of amateur astronomy and outreach. This was a very, very obvious choice this year as well, because many of you hopefully joined in to attend last year's virtual TSP. How many people were on the virtual TSP last year? Those of you who weren't missed out on something extraordinarily special. You know, there have been other star parties that have made efforts to put together a virtual event in light of not being able to host the formal, in-person event. But the group that were responsible for the virtual TSP last year went above and beyond to put together something extraordinarily special. And we are extremely proud to present the effort, the Omega Centauri Award. We have 3 of them here. To Don Selly, Joe Khalid, Felix, and William. We will get done soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely humbled and honored to receive it again, so I appreciate that. And it was a wonderful opportunity working with Will again, so look forward to doing this more in the future. So one last announcement before I ask Robert Reeves to come back to the front here. If you've not picked up your t-shirts yet, has everybody got their TSP 2022 shirts yet? You ordered them? If you've ordered them, have you picked them up from the back? These are the hottest things on the runways in Paris and Milan, so make sure if you bought one, you ordered one, that you get it before you leave here. Otherwise, we're going to have to keep it in storage, and we do not want to do that. So please make sure to pick up those shirts before you leave. Now, finally, I'd like to ask Robert Reeves to come back to the stage once again to introduce tonight's speaker.
I really don't know what I love here, because there's not a single person in this room who does not know who Deborah Byrd is. How many of you were the very first Texas Star Park in 1979? 1970, over the state park. I see a hand over there. Nobody else was at that very first one? Well, it was you and me, buddy. So I remember that as well. Yeah, I was there with some friends, my wife and friends. But then we had the Texas Star Party on the state park for 3 years, and we got very popular. We got moved the state park, and we had to migrate over here. And got money with dedicated to the golf course. The rest of the TSP crew that's evolved into what it is today. And today she's coming back to see how her baby has grown up. And I'm very proud to show her the results of the seed that she planted. It was 40-some-odd years ago. Now, Debbie was working at the University of Texas at the time, and many of you remember her very popular radio show that she helped produce, and started, which is still going on today, under different management. But Debbie moved on to her own project, Earth and Sky, and did a radio show very similar to what she's been doing over at started. That went on for a while, but now it's exclusively a web-based presentation, Earth and Sky, and Earth and Sky.org. And then he continues the tradition of publishing astronomy news, outreach news, promoting astronomy in general. This is a lifelong passion. She's got a group of like 20 people to help her with this. So this is really a class act. You need to check out her website. The traffic on it is just going through the roof during the pandemic. So jump in there and help it go even higher. So we'll let Debbie talk to you now about her early evolution of the Texas Star Party, her continued passion for astronomy, and we'll let you. Thank you.
I'm so happy to see you all. Hello? Ah, there it is. Wow. It's a thrill for me to see you here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And there's also chocolate over here. Wow. Let me get set up a little bit here. You ready? So how many of you ever hear Harlan Smith speak? So Harlan was an astronomer. He was the director of the McDonald Observatory from 1963 to 1989. And he was my boss and mentor beginning in 1976. He is really the reason that all of you are sitting here tonight. So Harlan was unusual for an astronomer in the 1970s. Like now there's so much astronomy popularization, but in the 1970s there wasn't. And it was unusual for a professional astronomer to be interested in that. But Harlan was very interested in popularizing astronomy and including the community in astronomy. And so he always said that McDonald Observatory was like a three-legged stool, and that one leg was astronomy research, and one leg was teaching classes at the University of Texas, and the third leg was public outreach. So to say that he supported my early efforts is a huge understatement. In fact, he just inspired me and a lot of other people. He was a great man. I've known very few great men. Harlan, right? Those who do, he was a great man. And as for me, I was an English major, and I got into astronomy by accident. So this is the scene at Gregory Gym at the University of Texas. This is actually before my time, because you see a bunch of guys in ties here. We didn't wear ties. I was registering for school, but we did have to go, instead of registering online like we do today, we did have to go to the gymnasium and stand in long lines to register for our classes. So I was an English major, and I was getting close to graduation, but I had to take some science. And I heard that physical science was easy. And so I went to this gymnasium and I stood in a long line, and I got up in front of the line, and physical science was closed. And so next to physical science there at the gymnasium was physics. And the guy behind the table for physics said to me, "Oh, I have this class for non-science majors, and it's very easy, and you'll really enjoy it." And so at that point, I had to look up the word physics in the dictionary, because I didn't have any inkling what physics was. I had never taken a physics class. I had no knowledge of physics whatsoever. but it was a summer school class. And if you've ever taken summer school, you know it goes really fast. And I was just lost for the first couple of weeks. But then suddenly, I just like a gear and my brain was turned, and I started to just love physics. I just loved it. I just developed this passion for it. And that summer school class. I did not have a math background, but I was a big sci-fi fan. And so I started taking astronomy classes. So the university had quite a few classes for non-science majors in astronomy. And I took a bunch of classes. And I'd already had some experience on a daily newspaper and was taking some journalism classes and started writing my journalism articles for my classes on astronomy. And then I went to McDonald Observatory and I said, I'm a writer. Do you need a writer? And they said, no. But I kept going back, and I kept saying, I'm a writer, you need a writer? And they're like, but finally they said, well, we've got this one project that we've been, trying to get accomplished for a few years now, and nobody's really been able to do it. And it's writing a series of brochures on research in astronomy. And so they hired me on a contract basis to write that research, astronomical research series, and that's when I started working for McDonald Observatory. So at that point, which was around 1976, and you can see that I didn't take the amateur astronomy route into astronomy, like you folks did. I didn't start as an amateur astronomer. I took the route of writing about astrophysics. And so this is a 107-inch telescope. It's now called the Harlan J. Smith telescope. And in the late 1970s, when I first started coming here, there was no visitor center at the time. And you would go up to this dome and open a door on the ground level of the dome. And there was a little room in here. And inside that room, they had a few books on astronomy that were chained to the wall. And they had a glassed-in booth where some of the wives, some of the technical people who worked for the observatory would be behind the booth, and they would take your money if you wanted to buy a postcard or something like that. But there was no visitors program at all at the time. So this was mid to late 1970s. So when we came to the observatory as staff, they gave you a key. And that key would open any door on the mountain. And so I would go out there, and I would always get onto a night schedule in the same way that the astronomers did. So I would take a nap, my first day there, and then I would just stay up all night the first night, and then sleep the next day, and then stay up all night. Every night that I was there, and I would tend to go out for maybe a week or so at a time. And I would just use that key and open those doors and go from dome to dome and sit inside the domes with the astronomers late at night, and they would tell me about their research. And it was just amazing. And then, of course, it was really dark out there. Nobody knows that as well as you guys do, because it's really dark here too, so it's very much the same thing. But I would be out there, it was, for a girl from suburban San Antonio, that was a new experience, to be walking around out in the dark. And it felt so good there, so safe there. It was such a thrill to be out there, just walking around on the mountain at night. And I would stay in the transient's quarters where the astronomers stayed. Come out of that glass and light, and you could come out of that door into that total darkness. And I got to where I could just walk across the road there and hit the first stairway, go lead up to this 107-inch telescope and just walk up it in the dark and walk all around the mountain in the dark, and felt really happy. And so later, for a time, I helped manifest Harlan's vision for public outreach by hosting the public meetings of this telescope. But this is my favorite telescope on the mountain range. And how many of you have been inside of this dome? A bunch of you have. So you know that this telescope was built between 1933 and 1939. And on the bottom floor of this telescope, there are little rooms, little monk-like rooms. And that's where the astronomers used to sleep and stay. And they would come to the observatory to observe. So nowadays, when an astronomer goes to McDonald, he or she might be out there for several nights, part of a week, maybe a week. But they used to go out there and stay for months. And they would stay in those little monk-like rooms and do their observing with this telescope, which at the time was the only telescope on the mountain. So there was also a library in this dome. And back in the 1970s, you would find me at 2 or 3 in the morning sitting in that library writing out stuff that the astronomers had told me about by hand, because of course we didn't have computers back then. So I was writing everything in longhand. And then once on the catwalk of this telescope, I saw a moon that was only 18 and a half hours away from Newton. And I yelled to the 2 grad students who were inside the dome, and they came running out, and all looked at this little ghostly moon. It was just before sunrise. And just the barest bit of it was lighting. And we were super excited about that, and later the 3 of us wrote up our observation and sent it in the sky telescope, and they published it. We were very excited. So this is me in 1978, and if you can look at my eyes there, you can see by that time I was starstruck, seriously starstruck. And by that time I had started myself looking at the sky. And it used to be when we go to the astronomy department at university to check out a telescope, a small telescope. And so I would check out those small telescopes and bring them out to the observatory and use them just for looking around in the sky. Until somebody said to me that was kind of like bringing water to the ocean. And so at that point, I started applying for time on the 30-inch and 36-inch telescope. And of course, I had to apply for the time in the light and moon. At times, none of the professional astronomers wanted to use the telescopes, but they did grant me time with those small telescopes, and I was able to use those small telescopes just for looking around. And that's where, inside the 30 or 36-inch dome, where the idea that the Texas Star Party was born. And I'll tell you more about that in a bit. Because it took me a while to figure out how to juxtapose that picture of myself with this picture. Because I think these guys are so cool. This is Jefferson Starship in 1976. And we've got to go back several technologies now. But in 1977, we didn't have computers, but we had telephone answering machines. And so the observatory asked me to write little messages on astronomy. We would put them on a telephone answering machine, and you could call a number and get this little message on astronomy. And so a program director from Austin, the radio station, KOJ AM, was calling that number. And I was writing messages, and he said that he liked the messages, and they wanted to put them on the radio. So how many of you thought that Stardate was McDonald Observatory's first radio show? Yeah, well, it wasn't. McDonald's first radio show was called Have You Seen the Stars Tonight? Named after a song by this group, the Texas Starship. And it aired on KOJ FM in Austin for about a year. And during that time, it became popular. And so Harlan Smith, again, encouraged me to write a grant proposal and get the money to syndicate the show. And we got the grant. And so we changed the name of the show to Stardate. And, I've been a huge Star Trek fan in my teens, and even in my early college years, I've gone to the University Union with a bunch of other people, 4 o'clock every afternoon, and watched Star Trek. But I'm not the one who came up with the name Stardate. I'm a DJ in Austin named Brady Blount is the person who came up with that name. And he was trying out at the time to be the voice of Star. But we didn't ultimately hire him to be the voice because we hired this guy, Joel Bob. Does anybody remember the old Star name? Was it Joel Bob? Yeah, a few people did. I actually went to Joel to see if he could record the show at his recording studio. He had a studio there in Austin, and I had like a little handful of scripts with me, and he picked up one of the scripts and he just read it cold. And as soon as I heard his voice, I wish you could all hear his voice. I could have brought some tapes of his voice, but he had the most perfect voice for an astronomy radio program. So we took the grant money that I got from the National Science Foundation, and we started producing Stardate, and Joel and I together produced thousands of radio shows in the Stardate series from 1978 to 1991. And it was during that time that I started the Texas Star Party. So like I say, the idea for it had been born in the 30 or 36 inch telescope, and my original thought was, I mean, this was before the time of widespread use of doxilium in the ounce. And so it was very unusual for an amateur astronomer to get to look through a 30 inch telescope. Like nowadays, you've got a 25 inch telescope here at the Star Party this year. But at that time, you just didn't see that. You didn't see big amateurs using big telescopes. So my thought was that we would come to the observatory and look through those telescopes. So I had no idea that it would evolve into what it is today. This is a quote of Texas Star Party by Alan Dyer, and he is with his book, which is called The Backyard Astronomer's Guide. It's sitting over there on that table, and this picture is, he told me, was the front image of that book. And that's one of the door classes tonight or Saturday night or one of these nights. But the first Texas Star Party was held in August because we wanted to get that time on the 30 and 36 inch telescopes, and August was said to be the rainiest month. So again, we had to get the time when none of the professional astronomers would want to use those telescopes. But they did give us time on both the small telescopes. I think was it you who told me today, Robert, that you went up to the mountain during one of those first Texas Star Parties and got stuck up there? I think it was in the fall. Yes, Robert told me this afternoon that they were up on top of the mountain in one of the first Texas Star Parties in a fog the whole day. And you know that road to the observatory was pretty twisty. And they told them they didn't want them to go back down the mountain because it was too dangerous. So Robert told me that they gave them blankets and pillows and they let them sleep under a pool table. And the Corinthians quarters, so that was the early Texas Star Party. It was held at the state park, and people did bring their own telescopes. And I had organized the first one in 1979. I organized the second one in 1980, and I couldn't come to it because I was busy having a baby. I heard in July of 1980. And the Star Party was in August, so I didn't make it. And then I organized a third Texas Star Party also, but I came to it with my 1-year-old, and it was crazy. And I just said to myself, there's just no way I'm going to be able to keep doing this. And it was at that point that George Ellis, wait a minute, George. Everybody knows George. George Ellis and the late great Don Garland and David Clark came to me and said, we want to be the organizers of the next Texas Star Party, and we're going to move it to Prude Ranch. And that's what we did, and here we are today. So I'll stop for a second here if anybody wants to ask anything about those early days. Okay, well, I got to get some water. Yes, sir.
What sort of telescopes did you have if you didn't have doxilium?
We just had equatorial mounts. so it was hard for an amateur astronomer to be able to afford an equatorial mouse. Like, I don't know how long you've been in astronomy, but that was a big revolution in astronomy. When John Dobson came up with the Dobsonian mouse, and he did his sidewalk astronomy in San Francisco, and that enabled so many amateur astronomers to be able to use those much less expensive mounts to build telescopes, to get telescopes that were bigger telescopes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What was the typical attendance for your first year?
Typical attendance.
Oh, I think the first year we had about 100 people. So, it was not as big as this one, but it was a fair size. It was a pretty good size. And, I don't know about the second year because I wasn't there. I was having a baby. But, yeah, it started out at a pretty good size. I mean, there was a lot of interest in it. And basically what we did was we just went to the astronomy clubs and advertised. In fact, I was talking to George about this because the first flyer for the Texas Star Party had 1 star on it. And then the second flyer for the second year's Texas Star Party had 2 stars on it. And the third year had 3 stars on it. And in my mind, I was envisioning that every year you would have this flyer for the Texas Star Party and you'd add a star. But that didn't keep going. We've lost those flyers now. We look for them, but we've lost them. Yes.
I did in high school, I was at one of those events. And I remember we were in the state park and answered this next question. I had a 6-inch estimated unit that told me about agricultural mountain had a lot of backlash. And I used to take wide angle astrophotos of what I call constellations. And I brought out a whole slide tray and put up the 82-inch telescope on the top of the mountain that programs like the programs we're having right now. And I remember giving a slideshow on the grave of the 82-inch telescope, the live pictures. We did stuff like that because we were allowed to.
Yeah, we were allowed to.
It was cool to me because I remember just walking to the front door of the smaller day. And that was like the Texas landmark on there. And I saw names of famous astronomers on these offices on the wonderful library and all these legendary astronomers.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was a cool. And here I am. I'm not really that old.
You were just a child, man. I'm your child.
I'm here.
Me too. I'm gonna keep going. Because I stayed at Commemorative for 15 years and produced starting for 13 years. And in 1991, I left there and I started my own small business. And Stephanie and I were Stephanie and I were talking about starting businesses today. And let's go to the next one. This was the first group, the first Earth and Sky rating series group, just a small group. And I gotta tell you, we were struggling. So my daughters, who by that time were about 8 and 10 years old, sat on the floor with me and stuffed envelopes. And we mailed envelopes to radio stations full of little flyers that said, hey, this is good. Of course, starting was still going on. So suddenly we had another radio show that was getting started, but we had Joel Block. Joel Block came with us. So we managed to get on a few radio stations, but that first year was a huge struggle. And 20 years later, we were still there. And by that time, we had gotten so many great grants from so many organizations, the National Science Foundation and NASA. We had some grants from private foundations like the Moody Foundation, and all of those places were interested in astronomy outreach. So it was really, by then, it really changed that astronomy outreach was becoming a much more doable thing because there was money out there available to do it. And at one point, we even had a grant from Shell Oil that helped us this is the movie in 2010, and that's my daughter sitting next to me, sitting to the right of me, and she's working with me today. So she came from one of my daughters, so she came from studying those envelopes at age 8, and now she manages the business of the Earthsky.org website. So by 2013, which was not long after this picture was taken, I was tired of writing grant proposals. I had really had writing grant proposals. And but I just had one more thought, and that was that everybody was saying that the internet was the place to be. And we had started our website in 1994, so we thought, well, we'll just take the astronomy information and we put it on the radio and just put it all on the internet. And so that's what we did. And I said to myself, well, I was 62 at that point. And so I said to myself, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just retire. And maybe I'll retire in 2 years. And then now, that was 2013. I took from these people, most of these folks we had to let go of. We took a core group of 5 people and we started the earthsky.org website. And now, almost 10 years later, we're doing great. We're still here. We had like 4 or 5 million people come to the site last month. And we're talking about the night sky astronomy and also astrophysics and other kinds of science as well, because we do do some earth science too. Although we're known for astronomy, astronomy is our focus. So I'm still saying I'm going to retire in 2 years. But in the meantime, I hope you'll all drop in on us at earthsky.org. We have a community photo page where you can come and submit your night sky photos, and we would love it if you would all do that. And we also have a daily newsletter that you can subscribe to, and it'll keep you up to date with what's going on in the night sky and also with the astronomy news, the news and astrophysics. So now I'm just going to tell you about a couple of things in astronomy that I think are interesting. And so when I first started in astronomy, one thing I did was collect old astronomy books. And this image, which I think is a photograph, was the frontispiece of a book by a guy named Garrett Service. The book was called Curiosities of the Sky, and it was published in 1909. And under this photo, the caption read, the great spiral nebula in Andromeda, a solar system in the process of formation. So you can see that seems very quaint to us today, right? You can see that in 1909, just 100 years ago, they didn't know what this object was. They could see that there were these spiral-shaped objects in the sky, but they didn't know how far away they were. And they still didn't know in 1920 when Hubert Curtis and Arnold Shapley had their great debate. And Shapley was arguing that the universe had just one galaxy, the Milky Way. This was 1920, 100 years ago. Only one galaxy in the universe, the Milky Way. And that the spiral nebulae were forming solar systems. And Curtis argued that we didn't know the distance to these spiral-shaped objects. We just didn't know. It's not that we knew one way or the other, we just didn't know. And so Shapley won the debate with this idea of just one galaxy in the universe. He won, but you may know what happened 3 years later, and that is that astronomers discovered sepia variable stars in this galaxy. So a sepia variable star is a star that pulsates at a very regular rate depending on its mass, and therefore its true brightness is correlated to its rate of pulsation. So if you can look across space and see a star pulsating in this object, and you know that the rate of pulsation is tied to its mass, and you know approximately what that means in terms of that star's mass, you know how bright it should be, and you can look at how bright it appears and find its distance. And so that's how they found the distance to be what we now know as the Andromeda Galaxy. And we knew that the Milky Way was about 100,000 light years across, but the Andromeda Galaxy was down to 2 million light years away. So just 100 years ago, the boundaries of the universe suddenly just got much, much closer. And then it was just a couple of years after that the Hubble found out that not only are there these other galaxies out there beyond the Milky Way, but they're expanding away from each other. So if the galaxies are expanding away from each other, that implies that there was a time earlier in the history of the universe when the galaxies were together. And that means that there must have been a beginning to the universe. And that idea just went contrary to everything that people thought about the universe. Because before that time, they thought that the universe had existed forever and would exist forever. So there was a lot of resistance to the idea put forth by George Lemaire in 1931 of a Big Bang that started the universe. Like we today think of Big Bang as just being gospel, but in 1931, a lot of people didn't believe it. There was a competing theory, and the competing theory was called the steady-state theory. And it was the idea that, yes, the galaxies are expanding away from each other, but matter is being spontaneously created between the galaxies, and that's what's enabling the universe to expand forever, even though there is no beginning to the universe and there will never be an end to the universe. So the steady-state theory held sway, along with the Big Bang theory. Those two theories competed for much of the 20th century. By the time I got into astronomy in the 1970s, the Big Bang theory had won out. Most astronomers, the evidence was there, most astronomers believed in the Big Bang theory. And now I'm going to jump forward to today, and this is not a real picture, this is a simulation that was developed in, developed in 2019 by some scientists in Japan. You can see this distance indicator here. So that distance says that it's 125 megaparsecs. So a parsec is 3.26 light years, and a megaparsec is 1 million parsecs. So you can see that this is depicting a vast distance in the universe. And in the 1970s, when I came into astronomy, we had this idea that there was a Big Bang, and that the galaxies spread out uniformly from the Big Bang. But over the years, astronomers began to realize that galaxies would group together in clusters and superclusters. And now, their picture of the universe is that this honeycomb-like structure, these walls, it looks almost like bubbles, but there are walls here, and then voids in between. And the walls are the clusters and superclusters of galaxies. So the universe is gathered into this large structure, which astronomers call the cosmic web. And that's the modern picture of the universe. Our universe exists as a cosmic web. And I don't think there's anything that surprises me so much in astronomy as this picture. The change from the idea that galaxies spread out uniformly from the Big Bang to the idea that things collected into this honeycomb structure. And it's just a true thing that as we look at things more closely, as we study things, we see that in more details, things just get more detailed and more detailed and more detailed. And that's what's happened here. So let's look at some details. Oh, you see the slide. Oh, it's not here. Oh, no. Okay. So I was going to show you a picture of the Milky Way galaxy as taken by the Meerkat telescope in South Africa. I'm trying to jump from about that slide. No, it's not here. Go back. Nope.
Sorry.
That's okay. One more time. Yeah. Okay. So this is the guidance spacecraft, and that was launched by the European Space Agency in 2013, and it's supposed to keep observe it until 2025. At least, how many of you have heard of Gaia mission? Yeah. So what Gaia does is it does astrometry. So when I was in the 70s, I thought astrometry was not very glamorous. And of course, we think of the sky and the stars as being fixed. We know they're moving. Like we have this picture of the stars in the Milky Way galaxy moving around the center of the galaxy. But because the stars are so far away, we can't see them moving. And so what astrometry does, and what this space observatory does, is it takes very precise measurements of the location of the stars. In the 1970s, it was really tough to do that because it couldn't be so precise. But what this space observatory will do is it will take a precise location of the star, and then it will come back and take another precise location, and then it will come back again and take another precise location. And so what it's doing is that for the first time ever, it's measuring, actually measuring the motion of stars moving through the Milky Way galaxy. And it's not just doing that for one star, but it's doing it for, it has done it so far for something like 2-3 billion stars. And so the ultimate goal of this space observatory is to create a 3D map of the Milky Way. But if you know how science works, you know that an observatory like this one will just amass a ton of data, and then astronomers will come in and they'll, go through the data, analyze the data, and find out different things. And so some of the things they've found out, for example, is that of the several dozen satellite galaxies in the Milky Way, they can see how those galaxies have moved within the Milky Way, gone through it, come out the other side, and they're coming out again, and they can see it because they can't see the merger because it's happening on too long a time scale, but they can see the path that the object, the satellite galaxy is on. So that's one amazing piece of information that we've got from Gaia. And we can see streams of stars, collections of stars that are moving together through space, presumably have been born together. In a cloud of gas, but they can actually see them moving through space. Another thing that you see with Gaia data is what they call high velocity stars, where there are groups of stars that are just moving much faster than the other stars. And you all know, I'm sure, that the Milky Way and most galaxies are thought to have supermassive black holes at their centers. And so you can kind of picture that if a star came near that black hole, it might swing around it and gain some momentum and be propelled out of the galaxy. But that's not what they're seeing with Gaia. What they're seeing is that there are stars heading toward the black hole in the center of the Milky Way at high velocity. And they don't have any idea why that's happening. There's not from Gaia, but from the slide that didn't get in there, another thing that's super interesting about the center of the galaxy, which, tonight, when you're at the telescopes, you might think of this, but there's a large population of filaments. So if you just picture, picture in the mind, since the slide's not there for a second, picture the Milky Way galaxy, and there are just like it's mostly on a plane, a single plane. But perpendicular to that plane, the Meerkat telescope has discovered these lines, these streaks, and they're emitting at radio wavelengths. And they don't have any clue what those are. They're just saying that they're a large